I would like to start our meeting by honoring the land that we are on, which has been the site of human activity since time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements, including the One Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, are agreements to peacefully share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We are mindful of broken covenants and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. I would also like to acknowledge those of us who have come here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. And so I honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. Okay. Next, I would like to and to take a moment to honor actually the moment. So I want us to answer one question, to answer two questions in the chat. The first question that I'm going to ask you to put in the chat is, how are you feeling about these cuts and the changes that are happening? And I'm hoping some brave people can put how they're feeling in the chat. And when you put it in the chat, if you can respond with a emoticon or a thumbs up to show that you feel similar or there's some solidarity in the chat, that would be appreciated. This work is both important and professional, but also our emotions and our hearts are intertwined with it, and we're trying to do a lot in these 3 hours. So I'm trying to give you space to acknowledge and hear each other's feelings in the chat in this moment. So when people put their real feelings in the chat, please acknowledge that and do the human thing. The second question that I want to ask is, what inspires you to continue to do anti-racist work? What inspires you to do this work despite all that's happening? And when you put that in the chat, I need you to double remember that. You know what I mean? Because while we were thinking about trying to prepare this with the lived experience team, we came out of all the conversations, remembering how important this work is. So in addition to answering how you're feeling, also answer what keeps us going. Okay, and now to give context to this situation, I would first like to introduce NLS's very own Paulina. Paulina, please take it away.
Thank you, Ruben, for the wonderful introduction. You make me feel so important. So yes, my name is Paulina Wyrzykowski. I think most of you know me. I'm the director of the Toronto South Local Immigration Partnership and Newcomer Services at the Neighborhood Group Community Services, which is a large social services agency based in Toronto. But I'm here today in my capacity as one of the two co-leads on the National LIP Secretariat. I don't know if the other co-lead is also here. Megan, if you are here, can you unmute yourself and say hi? She may not be, so. Okay, I'm assuming she's not. Ruben has asked me to say a few words of introduction to sort of further set the context for this meeting. I think we can all acknowledge that these are very challenging times for us, and I think they're challenging for two primary reasons. One, because it feels like for some time now, everything that we hold dear as local immigration partnerships has been under attack. The very idea of welcoming newcomers, the importance of equity, it feels like those ideas are under threat. And I think that makes us feel like we're under threat, right? It's very hard not to take that personally, especially when it also concerns our livelihoods. The second is just the amount of instability that we're seeing in the world generally. It is so challenging now to strategize about anything. I'm somebody who prides myself on my ability to strategize. It's gotten me far in my career, but I find that that ability is breaking down now because nothing is certain. It feels like all the certainties are gone. We just had one election. We have another one upcoming. The tariffs came in today with the US. We don't exactly know how long they'll last or what they're going to do. It feels like none of the old certainties are holding, and it's incredibly challenging to try to plan ahead as we do in those circumstances. In terms of concrete examples, in the last couple of months, the government announced a 20% decrease in the number of immigrants to come into Canada this coming fiscal year. This, of course, led to cuts in our sector, which were especially deep in the West and especially deep in year two because of the way that the funding formula works. I think we are feeling increasingly vulnerable as LIPs because we're indirect services providers. And I think we're all aware that in times of scarcity, it's easier to cut indirect services than direct services. I've also been hearing from many people, and I've also experienced this, that the current contract negotiations have been very turbulent. At least in Ontario, we've been finding that IRCC has been much more directive than in the past, in some cases, including things that impact our mandates directly without any consultation. And this is something that I'm taking up through NSIC and various other channels. But again, it sort of feels like we can't rely on our relationship with the funder anymore in the same way that we used to. I do have to say, in defense of IRCC, that I think all of their leadership is new. Most people have been there for fewer than 5 years, at least in Ontario. They themselves are facing layoffs. They're going to lay off 25% of their workforce over the next few years. And I know that many project officers and even higher up folks have been getting layoff notices in the past 2 weeks. So, people are scared about their own jobs, which is impacting their relationships with us as well. On the upside, some of us have begun to see our contracts being signed. LIPs have been contacting me to let me know that their negotiations have been successful. For myself, I can say that my National LIP Secretariat contract has just been signed last night, so we will continue this work. I'm very happy to be able to tell you that today. On a less happy note, we are also seeing a lot of pushback to the equity work that we've been doing. And, we're seeing a lot of that come from the United States, but we also know that that might be the future here. And it puts us in a vulnerable situation because on the one hand, LIPs have been, fundamental to doing some of this work over the past 5 years, especially. We are the ones who are driving some of the anti-racism initiatives in our communities, some of the dialogue around immigration. Many of us have built our proposals for the next 3 years around equity principles in alignment with what the government asked us to do. So to now sort of anticipate a backlash to all of that and to feel like we may be vulnerable because of it, I think is especially unnerving. And again, aside from the strategic piece of all of this, we believe deeply in this work. So it does feel like we're being personally threatened in terms of the work that we do. We decided to have this last professional development session of this fiscal year to focus on how to function and keep the important work going in these conditions of total instability. We want to make room for people to grieve, and there will be sort of another informal session to debrief, but we also need to start to strategize how we're going to move forward and how we're going to protect and build on the work that we've done already. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful speaker.
But first, I got to drop the bio so we can get hype, hype, hype. But Paulina, that was well done. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Dr. Vidya Shah is an educator, scholar, and activist committed to equity and racial justice in the service of liberatory education. Liberatory educate, that's a hot line. She is an associate professor in the Faculty of Education at York University, and her research explores anti-racist and decolonial approaches to leadership in schools, communities, and school districts. She explores educational barriers to the success and well-being of Black, Indigenous, and racialized students. Dr. Shah teaches in the Master of Leadership and Community Engagement, as well as undergraduate and graduate level courses in education. She has worked in the Model School for Inner Cities program in the Toronto District School Board and was an elementary school teacher in the TDSB. Dr. Shah is committed to bridging the gaps between communities, classrooms, school districts, and academia to reimagine emancipatory possibilities for schooling. Dr. Shah is also a facilitator with the Center for Courage and Renewal. Wow. Okay. Thank you. I can't wait to hear you teach us. And I also want to let you know that don't rush yourself for time. I know we're behind schedule, but that's not your problem. You do what you got to do. We're here to listen. We're here to learn. Thank you.